It's Monday night. It's Take on the World TV. And of course, you guys know that means it's time for Disputed Lands. Uh, One of these days, I'm going to get that intro work back in with the software. I'm still figuring things out. As you all know, I took a break last week. Oh, I'm going to have to fix something over here. Mute that. I took a break last week. Ian did a great job. The Duck. I'm just going to have to call him Duck and call him Ian. Because we got two Ians, we got two Chads, and there's three of us on 11-11-19. So that's enough to start a bunch of rumors. Anyways, Take on the World TV. I'm excited tonight because we have Ian Chadrick back on the channel. Now, he's been on the channel, don't get me wrong. Everybody knows that. But on Disputed Lands, this has been actually 2 years. If you can believe it or not, it's been 2 years since he's actually was first on this show. I think Ian's going to talk a little bit about everything that's transpired since that time. It seems like there's been a solid trajectory that I've just watched. Well, as a friend, it's been an honor to be a friend, but just it's been nothing but rejoicing for me to see this man's life and ministry take off in the direction that it has. I'm going to say this first. Many of you guys may or may not know who were around back then, but Ian Chadrick is the one who created the intro and the outro for my podcast in which I'm reading through my book. So if not the British guy that does the commercial, I paid $5 to have the British guy. Look, everybody needs a British guy to do a commercial for you.
$5 is good, man.
I mean, it's $5, $10. Even if you don't have a podcast or anything, just write up something that you want a British guy to say and then post it everywhere. I mean, it's and have your name in there. It's just fun. I mean, it's worth the $10. The mileage you'll get out of that will be endless. But anyway, Ian created the intro and the outro to that, and since then it's been Ian, the Duck, how you been, brother? Good to see you. Great job last week, by the way.
I'm tired. I'm tired, Chad.
You're tired?
I'm a little tired.
They've been working you hard?
Yeah, today was a really long day, but I'm not too tired for the show. I'm excited. Chadrick and I, we've been talking a lot the past few days. It's real hard for him and I not to talk for like 3-4 hours at a time. That's not even an exaggeration, is it? Yeah.
No.
Well, I want you to know, Duck, that the is holding strong, man. The beards, you guys are just like
I'm just trying to keep up with
Fairbairn. We got the Resist shirts going on. We got the Disputed Lands going on. We got the Bigfoot hat going on. I'm telling you, we are ready. So without further ado, I'm going to stop blabbing. Chadrick, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, guys. I love this show. So good to be back.
We love you. We love you, man. So 2 years ago, you come on Disputed Lands. You give a testimony. We share some of the stuff you just kind of do for fun, something that you enjoy doing, creating songs and melodies to scriptures that inspire you in the Bible. But since then, what happened, man? What has happened in 2 years?
Man, if you don't remember,
go.
That show was on Now You See TV back in the day, and
yes.
I remember at that point of my walk, I did not have any fellowship whatsoever with anyone, and I had just come into all this knowledge and began to share it with people, but got shut down. You know, it's crazy stuff, right? And I remember praying at that time. I remember praying for fellowship. Like, you know, that was my main thing. I was on the, I don't know. I was on 119 Ministries Fellowship Finder. I think this was before Now You See TV had theirs. They may have had theirs, but there wasn't anybody around me. So I was bummed out about that. But I was watching this show and I felt like when I was praying that prayer for fellowship, the Lord put you, Chad, on my heart, and he just said, reach out to him. And so I was like, okay, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen, man. I didn't expect you to answer the phone or give me your phone number. You know what I'm saying? But you did. And then I don't know if you remember how it went down.
You'll have to remind me of the details, brother.
Yeah, here's how it went down. I called you. I said, "Can I call you?" You said, "Yeah." Gave me your number. I called you, and I said, "I felt like the Lord told me to call you and tell you my testimony." I started talking. Maybe 10 minutes in, you're like, "Hey, I'm actually about to get on a show, do a live show. How do you feel about coming on and just going and finishing what you're talking about on there?" You didn't know me. You didn't know the rest of my story. You didn't know any of that stuff, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to share it on the internet, especially on Now You See TV, who had a pretty big crowd. And I was just like, "Oh man." And you're like, "Well, you got 10 minutes to think about it." And so I just thought about it, and I was like, what the heck, man? The power is through the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. So I just thought I'd do it, right? Little did I know that one little act of obedience, maybe on both of our parts, but just on my part, as I thought of being able to share that and being obedient to reach out, even though it made me nervous, but has opened so many doors for me, and also given me the fellowship that I prayed for. Now, the fellowship that I got was not in the way that I was praying. So I was praying for locals, right? And I didn't get locals until just recently. And it's not even the way I prayed. Still, it's local fellowship, but it's not in the same way at all. But the fellowship that I did get was beyond what I was ready for or expecting. Being involved with the Take on the World conferences and meeting Tony Stover and Ducky over here and all these other guys. And like he said, we talk it's hard for us to talk on the phone for less than 4 hours. And that sounds insane, but it's I can say that having good brothers around me is the only thing that sustains me through a lot of the stuff that I work in. Being able to reach out and call these guys and talk about things with these guys.
So take us back. So you get on and share your testimony. So after that show, tell us what you were feeling. What happened next?
Well, after the show, it was kind of just, freeing. But then a couple weeks later, I started I was making videos and stuff like that on the side. And I felt like the Lord was telling me at the beginning of 2018. So it's literally like less than a month from when we did the show, because you had the holiday season and everything there, which was, kind of jam packed with stuff. I remember the New Year's resolution. It sounds cheesy, but I felt like God was telling me to start a YouTube channel. And I didn't even know what that meant, really. I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to do a talk show. I don't know what I'm going to do, man. So anyways, I started it, and then I just started putting together a lot of the research that I had done with just several topics that people discussed, but maybe didn't know they connected. So I just started connecting things for myself. And I had been listening to YouTube for, I have a job, I still work at the same place, but I have the ability to listen to things all day long. So I get a lot of time to listen to books or, conference, interviews and things, all kinds of stuff all day long. And so I love to learn. So I cram that stuff in there as much as I can. And there's a lot going on up there that I need to get out. So I started to try to make an outlet for that and put these things together. And I started saving playlists of interesting topics that I'd heard. And, say, for example, I listened to something on Steve Quayle's Giants or something like that. And then I listened to, 100 other interviews about the same thing from different people. I would save the most relevant and more important interviews in a playlist. And then later on, when I'd go to make a film, I had all these resources that I'd already combed through, listened to, and I was able to pull things from each one. And I started to, I got the idea to make a film, Quantum Illusion. And then I had seen a video where you had Tony Stover on, and I didn't know who he was, man. And I never even heard of him. And he was doing the binary presentation. on your show for the first time. And when I saw that, man, it was like the missing piece that I needed for this film to connect everything. And that's just how God works with me, man. He just, I'm aware of how it works with me. And so I just, I'm cool with that. And I called Tony just like I called you. And I was like, hey, man, I think you gave me his number. I'm not for sure on how I got it. I stalked him through Amber.
So I don't remember. I don't remember making the connection for you, but I remember all of a sudden I started seeing you guys together as like a year later. But all of a sudden you guys I see you working together. But keep going. Don't let me.
Yeah, I stalked his wife because he didn't have a Facebook at the time, and I was like, hey, you don't know me, but I need to talk to your husband. And she was cool with that, man, which was really weird. But now that I know Amber, it's like funny. But yeah, and I talked to him for like 3 hours the first time I ever talked to him, and it was really weird, man. I mean, I've never talked on the phone that much in my life until I met you people. It's really insane. When I tell people that I talk to my buddies on the phone like a couple times a week, Nathan Reynolds and I talk on the phone like 5 times a day, man. It's really insane. But schedule wise, it's just he's only got like 10 minutes or 15 minutes at a time. So we're in the middle of something. We just keep calling each other back until we're finished. But yeah, I mean, it's really been the fellowship that I need, at the time. And so since that time, I've had my channel. I think I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers. I've got like 70 some videos on there.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
The Holy Hand Grenade. I also make movies or shows and videos for Take on the World TV. So you've seen the hand grenade stuff and the reality distortion effect videos and the certain ones like the quantum illusion film is on here. The family video is on here. There's a lot of stuff on here. This is like my backup channel, if you know what I'm saying. And not like it's a backup, but I still post everything to the Holy Hand Grenade. And I come over here and put it on here because I got a different kind of following on my page.
Well, you're a different kind of guy.
Yeah.
I can say that. You're my friend.
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff for Through the Black too. So that's why I rep their shirts and I love those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So you do this thing, Quantum Illusion. It was the kind of the final piece. You and Anthony. Well, I don't know. I always have to think of Anthony first because it's the only way I can find him on Facebook. Tony, you and Tony get together. You do Quantum Illusion. You guys have presented that together then that year, which you guys had to really work hard. I mean, we're talking, late fall 2017, and then you guys had a whole film put together, produced, and ready to show by August 2018. So you had like six months to put together a whole film.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. 6 weeks to put together a whole film.
Yeah.
And then you guys have been working together nonstop. You produced another one that was totally, I tell you, for me, it blew my mind because it was not the direction I saw you guys going, because you guys are very much interested in a lot of things that I'm interested in, which is exposing the dark that's in the world around us and the people behind it and the symbols that they use and how they operate and the meanings that they have for these things and how to combat them, right? So you guys are really heart to heart. You guys connect with me. I connect with you guys so well on those things because we just do. It's just something that's fascinating to expose. But then you guys go and create another film this year for Take on the World. And what was the name of that one?
Covenant Warfare.
Covenant Warfare. And you're taking on marriages. And I'm looking at you guys and I'm thinking, man, the growth, let me just say this, the growth from the Ian Chadrick that was nervous to talk to me on the phone 2 years ago to the Ian I see before me is absolutely astounding. And I get emotional for that because you are an example of what I know can be for each and every person that watches the show. If someone just gives another person the opportunity to use the gifts that God has given them, give them an opportunity to express themselves, and then the body to encourage them and gain from them, man, we just get built up so strong. And, we got another year ahead. I just get excited because if your life is an example of this, how many more lives can we reach this year, right? How many more people can we encourage and lift up and bring to the body and add to all of our benefits? So I just get really passionate about it because I just love it. You're, for me, a hope of what God can do for others when I look at you. No pressure. No pressure.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what, that is definitely the goal. I'm appreciative that you gave me that opportunity, but now we got to give that opportunity to other people.
That's right. Amen. Amen.
And the Covenant Warfare film, that's, it's not even that far of a stretch, to be honest with you, because, that's my testimony. I came from that broken marriage. That was my pit, so to speak, that allowed me to have this turnaround moment. That suicidal moment, where you're just like, you cry out to God and you're like, you're the only thing. You better come through, because I'm not going to make it. And then he does. That's so the marriage. And when you talk about spiritual warfare, which is what I mainly do now, and I'm really focused on that. That is definitely my calling, and deliverance, all the hard stuff that nobody wants to do, right? But the marriage is the number one target, and that if you're in ministry, you're not immune to it. It's happening whether you notice it or not. There's something going on, and it's always going on, and it's something that everybody has to be intentional about, focusing on that specifically, because if it's not your wife, it's your kids, or it's your parents, or it's somebody close to you.
So have you been going through Russ Disdar's training series then as well?
I'm already done with it. I did all of it. There's I don't even know how many there. It's a lot.
There's like 150, 160.
There's 1,000 hours, or at least 1,000 hours in several of the things. And then he has another page, the SIIU training page, the SIIUcrimes.com. And there's a whole bunch on there as well.
So have you been mentioned that you've connected a time or two with Tom and Jared then? So do you see yourself working with them more in the future then as we go forward, or what's going on there? How is that?
Absolutely. The cool thing with Tom and Jared is, so, I've been watching their show since the very beginning too, when they didn't know what was going to happen with that whole thing, like calling each other and just talking. No purpose at all, and it's just that, there needs to be more of that, because that's the realness that separates a lot of the shows from the rest of the podcasts of the world, because we identify with these people. These are real men, real issues, and they're just they found a gift and they're working in it, and they love the Lord and they love people, and it's to be admired, and they just go out there and they're real. They do the Bible studies. I mean, it doesn't have to be formal, and that's the cool part. As long as you're out there doing it, the engaging of the people is what's most important. So with Tom and Jared, one of Tom's goals, actually, I think both of them, but mainly I talk to Tom a lot, but is to begin this training, right? Start equipping people and make teams, right? Because Disdar can't do it all. Tom and Jared can't do it all. And there's a lot of us that want to get involved and are involved, and we're just not coordinated. So
what's that look like? What's how the forming of teams, and I mean, what's that look like? How does that take place? What's the actions here that happen to make this work?
Well, the main thing that we're doing right now is we're all getting trained. So we're all in groups, and I can only speak for the Ohio team, but they're taking classes. You're taking the Russ Disdar training courses, and you're going through, and it's kind of like an online small group type of setting, and you use the workbooks, and you go through and you study and you pray together. And the most important thing that we need to do together is pray. And, you know, intercession for each other, learning how to prayer map, you know, learning how to do spiritual warfare in your local area, because, you know, it's one thing to expose darkness on a nationwide or a global scale. But the purpose of it is to shine a light in the darkness. But you remember, there's darkness all around you. In your neighborhood is where you can be effective, right? You can't be effective in Switzerland, you know? Like, I'm in Ohio, bro. I can't get to Switzerland to do anything about any of this, right? But I can affect my local area. There's demonic activity. There's magic. There's you know, Luciferian occult stuff. There's even just hurting people that need people to come alongside them and listen to them and pray with them, and discipleship on you know, the biblical discipleship. You don't need to wait for a church to do it, you know, but we can equip each other. We can pray with each other, and we can set these teams up to go out there and be somewhat coordinated and reach these areas. One of the things that I'm working on right now, and this might hurt a lot of the viewers' feelings, but I go to Sunday church, y'all, and I'm called to the church, you know. And I know I'm not saying anything bad about those of you that have decided to pull away from it. But when I decided to pull away from it, the Lord smacked me and said, absolutely not. You're going back. And it was easy for me to pull away because I've been hurt by the church. That's part of my testimony, man. I grew up in the church. I was a church kid. I was at church 4 days a week. My parents were always involved. And then the church hurt my feelings big time, you know, and I pulled away. And I felt like it was super easy to pull away. And when I came into truth and the Lord started to direct my path again, he told me to go back into the church, because those are our brothers and sisters, whether they're, you know, right about everything or not, which they're right on some stuff, but they're wrong on a lot of things. But guess what? If you don't tell them, who's going to tell them? You know, you can't just leave them there. They're your family, right? And so I have a lot of friends in the church, and, you know, some of them are blind, but I'm going to be that guy that takes my blind friend to Jesus for a healing, you know? So that's what it's all about. And that's what I'm focused on. I'm getting involved in the local church. It took me a long time to find one that I could, you know, agree on a lot of their messages. And I found one, man. By God's grace and his direction, I found an awesome church with awesome people that are hungry. And there's a real good chance that we're going to be doing this DISDAR training on a church level. And we're talking like a 2,000 people a week that may be interested. And I got meetings this week to possibly introduce this stuff into the small groups. You know, that's what we're talking about here.
You're blowing my mind. So
I'm going to show you guys what one guy can do with God's help, you know?
2 years ago, 2 years from a guy who was nervous about speaking on the phone, nervous about giving his testimony, to 2 years later saying, I'm gonna see if we can get 2,000 signed up to go out with me. That doesn't happen without the strength and power of God working in the life. And he can do that with any of us. He can do that with any of us. If we just, Ian? What's the key?
Having the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and then what?
Being willing to go.
Being willing to go.
Answer the call.
Answer the call.
Get uncomfortable. You know, that if you feel comfortable and you feel like something like sounds a little crazy, when you feel like it's, you know, if you feel like the Spirit's telling you to do something, you're like, nah, I'm not doing that. You should probably do it. You know, and I don't do it every time, but I get convicted by it, and I'm getting tired of being convicted, to be honest with you. And I you know, I was talking to Ian about this. This is kind of our thing that we've been really discussing. This is what's happening right now. In my opinion, I deal with the same type of things that you deal with, Chad. Looking at the occult, looking at their steganography, their codes, their cycles, everything that they waste all this time believing. And I try to understand it so that I can, you know, to explain it to people. And I think of myself as, like, you know, the best example I can think of is the 12 spies. Okay. And Moses picks the 12 and sends them into the land, right? And he tells them to go spy out the enemy, right? And bring back a report. That's kind of what we're doing, right? Some of us have been chosen to go into the enemy territory and spy out the enemy's plans and what they got, right? But we're supposed to be bringing back a report and a battle strategy, man. We're not supposed to just bring back this darkness and talk about it all day long about how big they are and how crazy this stuff is, and then go back for a second look and come back like, guys, guess what? They got more stuff now, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, there's 2 guys out of the 12 that were ready to do something about it, right? And I'm going to be one of those guys. I'm not going to get left in the desert to die. You know, I'm going to go through to the promised land, man. And that's the way you got to look at it, because you got a lot of truthers or whatever you want to call these guys out there. Not that they're not doing good work and exposing things, but there's more to it than that. And it took me a minute to figure this out, but that's the shift that's happening. And I see it in a lot of people. The focus is becoming now, you can keep shining your talents and checking to see what the value is. But man, if you're not doing something with those talents, the master's not going to be happy with that. So
would you say that it took a mental shift, a change in your thinking, to go from being someone who was defeated to someone who's eager to fight the battle, to walk in a victory, or at least a willingness to fight? Would you say that you had to learn how to do that? Or would you say, I don't want to try to put words in your mouth, but I would say that my experience has been, both on a personal level and in meeting people, that there are some people who are afraid at success because they've been defeated most of their lives in anything that they've set out to do. Name any area of their life, and all they have known is defeat. Would you say that that was a pattern in your life that you had to learn?
Yeah, sure. I've done a lot of counseling. My mom's a family therapist, and I did some counseling with Kim Kibitza too. She's a member of the Take on the World crew. But one of the things that I really struggled with was rejection. And it all stemmed back, and it could have went farther back. I'm sure it went a little farther back, but it was more from my divorce and from that whole 3 or 4 year period of my life where, I felt rejected, and that caused a big problem, big hole in my life. And it was a lot of hurdles I had to jump through, but, getting healing for personal issues like that. And it only comes through prayer and asking the Holy Spirit to reveal these things to you, because there are subconscious things that hold you back. And you may, Paul, when he says, why do I do all the things that I wish I did all these things, but I'm doing these things, that internal struggle. It's because all of us have been fractured, at some point. We've all had some kind of trauma in our life, whether it's SRA, that's an extreme case, right? But everybody has been hurt by somebody. And that verse that says, what verse is it, Duck, in John, where Jesus says he's going to heal the brokenhearted and free the captives and all that?
Oh, you're talking about
it's in Isaiah as well, right?
Yeah, that's not John.
Oh, it's not John?
No, that's Matthew. I want to say it's 8:14, or no, maybe it's Luke. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Come on, don't be looking it up, man. I'm testing you, dude.
Yeah, well, I told you I'm tired.
Yeah. Well, anyways, when he says he came to bind up the brokenhearted, right? That if you do a word study on that, binding up the brokenhearted in the Greek and the Hebrew, it means fractured soul. Okay, so a lot of people don't even realize that they have been fractured themselves, and that God, that the fracturing that happens is something that God created in the human body as a life-saving, event, right? You die from a broken heart, or you fracture and somehow you split, right? You have separate things that you
double-mindedness,
right? Double-mindedness. But here's the thing: can a double-minded man serve Christ? No, he can't, because he has to be integrated, right? So a lot of people are we deal a lot with the SRA, and we're talking about the fracturing on this kind of level, but everybody needs to deal with that in their own personal life too, because you have to get yourself whole too. You have to integrate all those pieces that were hurt in order to be single-minded again and get on track. And I had to be break down some barriers there with the spirit of rejection. And also more recently, I was doing work on breaking free from, perfectionism somewhat. Like I had a sense about me where if I don't feel like I can do a good job at something, I just won't even attempt it. And that stopped me from doing a lot of stuff in my life because of the fear of not being perfect on something. And you work through it, right? You do the best you can, trying to overcome that on your own. But ultimately, you need the Holy Spirit to break that in your life, man. Thanks for pulling those verses up there. I don't look super weird now, but that's self-help. I mean, it's not about self-help, but it is about, you have to take responsibility for your own life and go to the Father with it, man. Like, it's more than just knowing things, right? So many times we get stuck on knowledge. We feel like, and that was my thing too. I enjoy the chase of finding and tracking down things. I enjoy that a lot. And you got to remember, the original sin was chasing knowledge. There's people who use the verses like, my people perish for lack of knowledge and things like that. But it's good to be prepared for things, but you cannot let it outbalance purpose. Our purpose is Great Commission. It's not to know everything. And for so long, it held me down because I would think, I'm going to do the commission, but I just need to finish this real quick because I need to figure this out. I want to make sure that I'm not walking into something that I'm not familiar with. But guess what? When I would feel that uneasiness, I was listening to Russ Dizdar, because I have been for a while, but one of the verses that he brought up that really nailed it right on the head was Romans 15:13. And it says, may the God of all, May the God of all hope fill you with joy and peace as you trust him, right? May the God of all hope fill you with joy and peace as you trust him. So you're not going to get the peace and you're not going to get the joy until you start trusting and leaning on him, right? And
I was going to say the joy of the Lord is my strength. Goes hand in hand with that. Yeah. There for me in talking about this reality, because that was something that I faced. I can remember being 7 or 8 years old, and I had no fear. I had none whatsoever. I mean, I've always been an type A personality, but I had no fear. And I talked about this not long ago on the show. At some point, something happened that I became fearful. I became unsure of myself and my actions, and that stuck with me for a long time. I think as social awareness came about, those things, your relationships, interacting with other people, and hurt, being put down, many of the same things that people talk about in here. But the problem was it became a habit. I until I found wrestling, which was an outlet for me in both aggression and ability to prove myself to myself, because I was good at it.
Did you were you, was that you that I saw fighting Bret Hart in 1989?
No, that's wrestling. That's wrestling. Okay. This is wrestling. This was really, mano a mano, and I was good at it. And it was something that, that, like I said, I let out my energy. It was natural for me, something that I'd always done growing up, having 2 brothers. But still, yet again, succeeding in that, I didn't ultimately succeed. And this is something that again, was part of the thing that the Father used for me. When I was a senior in high school, I was ranked in the top of the state on the Indiana State rankings. I was in the top tier. I think top 15 or something like that. I was 13 or whatever. But I was wrestling a guy down, and he was ranked third in the state, and I was beating this guy. I was up in points, and it was closing to the end of the match. He knew he was about to get beat, so he threw an illegal move. This illegal move, though I didn't realize at the time, separated my shoulder. And it caused me to not be able to go to conference or finals that year, which is where I had my focus and my goal set on. Here I was, the best shape I'd ever been, the best beating guys that were the best in the state, and I end up with a separated shoulder, and I can't compete anymore. It was just another one of those things that put a splinter in my mind that says you're something like this is always going to happen. There's always going to be something that gets in the way. I'm never going to be able to succeed at any of my goals and finish what I've started. It's just the way my life is going to be. And I don't remember vocalizing that, but mentally, it's what happened to me. I'm getting somewhere with this. It wasn't until much later, after the breaking, after my testimony and everything, that I began succeeding in the Father's will, that the joy of the Lord became my strength, knowing that I had pleased him. Think about that. Knowing that you can please the Father. There's so many people who don't even know what that is. They don't feel like they can be pleasing to him at all. But in little things, starting with the little things, he began to build me up. And there became no greater joy than, as you're talking about right now, Ian, that task set before you, the joy of saying, oh boy, here we go. I got something I can chew on. I got something I can bite on. This is a challenge in a wall in front of me that I can overcome with the Father, because there's a knowledge of success, right? There's a pattern. There's a pattern of faithfulness in the Father's reward in that obedience that will build you up. And that goes for anybody that's out here and listening, right, Ian?
Yeah. You
have to begin. And I know some people listening, you know, maybe they're younger, maybe they're older than we are. They've never found what they can feel has been their calling, a lifelong calling or a mission. And what would you say, Ian, to that person?
I would say God can do. His plan is probably most likely way more intricate and right on point than you think it is. I'll just give you an example. When I grew up, pretty much most of my life, I played the guitar, and I played other instruments as well. But my entire life focused around music. And this is going to get real good, guys. I promise you, man. It makes me super happy to tell this part because it's just now happening. And that's what's so exciting. When I was a kid, I played in the band, right? We had the church I was at, we had a band for the youth group, and there was a lot of kids in the youth group. And a pastor that we had at the time changed my life, and I hope to interview him on a future date just to tell him about this. And his name is Jeff Grinnell. You can look him up. He does amazing things. He's still an evangelist to this day. But he was an evangelist before, but he took our youth group for 5 years, and he challenged us as a generation that was going to change the world and take our cities for Christ, right? And he said, Dayton, Ohio, which is where I live, he's like, belongs to the Lord. And you guys are the generation that's going to take it, right? You're going to take it back. And that was when I was like 13 or 14, and I was playing in the band. So everything that I heard, I associated it with my gifting at the time, okay? And I had other giftings, but that was the one that I was really focused on, was music. And I wanted to be in a band and I wanted to work at a record label. I love Tooth and Nail. I love Christian metal and all that stuff. And at the time, I was going to. I left high school. Well, right before I left high school, someone at the church gave a prophecy over me. Okay, which is not uncommon at a spirit-filled church, right? Mm-hmm. These things get thrown around a lot sometimes. And the prophecy was, you're going to change. You're going to be a game changer for the kingdom of God, right? You're going to be super effective and instrumental in taking the city back. And I was like, cool, man, that's awesome. And I assumed it had something to do with my music because I was planning on being a famous musician, right? And which is, that's okay because that's where I was, Sure. I was just trying to figure it out from what I knew. But looking back, it's like, man, I was a naive kid and I had no idea what a relationship with God was all about at the time. But that's what's so cool about looking back. And so let's fast forward. Okay, so when I go through my divorce and everything, at the time of my divorce, I was a worship leader. I have never led worship since. That part of the hurt that I felt from the church destroyed that passion, and it pretty much destroyed my dream. Before that, I had kids when I was 19, so I never really got to move to Nashville and do the band thing because I had to be responsible. But I took it, I still took that gifting and I used it in the church, and I was a worship leader and things like that, and I led a college group as well. And then after that damage, right, that event that shook my life, it destroyed that part of me. Not to say that it's gone, but God used that moment to reshape and refocus me. And I didn't know at the time until now why that is. And so, here I am. This is my divorce was final in 2011. I'm remarried. This is my 8th year being remarried, and I have 3 more kids. I have 5 kids total. Very happily married. Love my wife. And it's amazing what God can do, what he can turn around. But here I am working with another gift. I am not doing music, but I'm doing video. Okay, so I went to college for audio engineering and video production. And at the time, I never fostered any of those gifts as far as video. I liked it. I thought it was cool. But here I am now. That's my main focus, is doing video, right? And doing internet stuff. And I hardly ever play my guitar. I love it. I just don't have time, right? I'm focused on this season now. And just recently, God has changed my focus here in the last couple of weeks to take back my city, right? To take my city back. And one of the stories that got me out of my pit was that moment after I was having suicidal thoughts, and I just cried out, and I needed God to come through for me. He reached down and he met me there. And then I immediately got up and I went and got in my car because I had life to live, right? I get in my car and I turn on the radio, and it's a sermon, which is super weird because I don't listen to sermons in the car. But at the point, I didn't really care what was going on because I was crying and I was just destroyed, The sermon happens to be about Joseph, okay? And it's talking about how Joseph's destiny couldn't have been fulfilled had he not been in the pit. And he had to be in the pit before he could get out and reach his destiny, right? That was a game-changing moment for him where he was at his low, right? And he needed God. And so that sermon at the time spoke right to what I needed, right? And I've remembered it ever since. And so this last month, when I feel like God is telling me, take back this city, right? This is all you, If no one else is going to help you, you start doing something and I'll bring them to you, right? And there's a lot of people that are helping, but he requires somebody to step out in faith and start to do things, right? He made Abraham purchase the first lot of the promised land, you know what I mean? And that kind of stuff. You got to make a step of faith. And so that's what I started to do. And yesterday and Sunday at church, man, they're talking about, it's the 30th anniversary for the church that I'm going to. And they were doing like a celebration for that, talking about the vision that God started 30 years ago and where it's taken them. Right. And it was a powerful service. And in that, the sermon that was preached was about Joseph. And he said, Joseph, when he was 17 years old is when we hear about him, right? And then he's sold and he goes away, but then he's back again and then reunited for another 17. But that 17 years old thing, man, that hit me straight in the gut, because that's when I was prophesied over, right? You're going to change the world. And that's when or change your city, take it back, right? When I was 17, I got that. And here it is. He's saying Joseph was 17 when God gave him a dream, right? And so, man, it's like the confirmations happen a lot for me. The more I focus on what I'm supposed to be doing, what I feel led that the Spirit is guiding me in, the more I see them, and people call them synchronicities or whatever, but I know it's the Holy Spirit's direction, and that's how I've recognized what he's talking about sometimes. I just think right now, here I am, and meanwhile, this whole time, right, between when I was 17 and like this last year, I have not wanted to live in this city. I've been trying to leave this city for my entire life, and here I am now, more passionate about staying here and helping this city know God. I believe that's my calling right now. And so a lot of these things that I'm focused on now, like making videos and doing this exposure type stuff, it might have to take a back seat for a while because I'm actually doing it. You know what I mean? And, I'm not saying that's going to happen, 100%, but I'm willing to do whatever God asked me to do. And if he asked me to go get involved locally and start doing street ministry and things like that, that's what I'm going to do. So times are changing.
Jump in here, Duck. What's on your mind? I see you back there.
What's on my mind?
Yeah, with what we've been talking about.
No, I've been listening. This is Chadrick and I. We've talked about this stuff multiple times before. I've watched his testimony and things like that. So this is just more of a recap for me.
Yeah, and your thoughts?
My thoughts.
Come on, man.
Come on. I'm gonna have to dig this out of you. I know you're tired, but
I am a little tired.
I'm not letting you off the hook, brother.
Okay, so when it comes to encouraging people to step out, it's good to encourage. I don't want to discourage that whatsoever. But I think there's some fundamental basics in the sense of, first off, when you step out of the boat to walk on water, you guys both brought up uncomfortability. You have to be able to embrace that uncomfortability. You guys both had mentioned earlier about how obedience goes along with that, right? So you're obeying in obedience. But from my personal experience, before any of that even happened, I was called out and chosen before I chose him. Like, he reached out to me. Like, I actually reached out first, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing in my own spiritual experience. I was broken down, I was desperate, and I reached out to him, and I didn't even know it was biblical. I basically just yelled out saying, I know that what I'm doing is not what you want me to be doing. I knew he was real. I grew up knowing he was real. I didn't know you could hear from him directly, though. I didn't know that. I saw it in the Bible, but I was raised to understand that that's an Old Testament thing. God doesn't work like that anymore, et cetera, et cetera. But I reached out basically saying, you're going to have to save me from me because I can't stop myself. Some of these things that I know you don't want me to be doing and then have consequences, I can't stop myself, and part of me doesn't want to. And it was months later that he reached out to me and started talking to me, and everything changed. Mind, mentality, passion, everything was turned on at a moment's notice. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't progression or growth, but it wasn't until that moment that my spiritual walk actually started. And at that point, it was like, okay, tell me what to do, I'll go. And then I'm not going to say I've obeyed every single time, that I've always done exactly what I've heard. I've never said, no, I'm not doing that or whatever. But I think those three things are pivotal. You have to be willing to step out of comfort. You have to give in obedience, but I think it's also important to have that relationship as the starter. You have to be a partaker of the fruits before you can labor in the field. And I think that's why we have a lot of issues in the institutionalized churches and things like that, is a lot of these individuals are trying to walk on water, but they don't have that relationship with God. So they're leaning on their own understanding without even realizing it. They're doing Christian as they know Christian, whether they were raised in it or they just see it in a congregation or they read a how-to book or they started reading scripture. Schaefer, one of that guy that we talked about that harassed and stalked me and my wife and my kid for a year and a half, he knew the Bible very well. He'd been studying it for 20 years, and he could reference verses, and he could debate doctrine and theology, and he was very, very knowledgeable on Scripture, but he never had that spiritual relationship. It's one thing to know a lot about somebody, and it's a whole nother thing to know them. I can be a fan of Jay-Z or whatever celebrity you want to plug into that blank space there. I can be their number one fan and not be in his phone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think that's the thing that I would emphasize with that is we want to encourage people to find that alignment in order to find their calling and to step out on.
I'll tell you something cool too. I used to think, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? Like, how the heck am I going to reach all these people? Like, it seems like a really a large hill to climb by yourself, right? And that's your flesh talking. But the more I get to know people in the church that I'm going to right now, I feel them out, okay? And yeah, they're not ready for the flat smack or anything like that, okay? But that's part of following the Spirit's direction, because the more we have so much knowledge, this group of people that watches this show right here and all the other shows on Take on the World TV, you have so much more knowledge than you know comparative to the mainstream church, okay? They are hungry. The people are hungry, whether their shepherd is or not. There are people in that flock that are hungry for what you know. And the best way to reach them is personal relationship, right? The more I get to know these guys in my small group that I'm going to, the more they ask me questions about things. When I answer a question in the small group and I have a completely different perspective on something that they've never even heard of before, they're like, they look at me like I'm crazy, right? But then they come to me later and they're like, man, how do you know that? Like, and then I'm able to say, hey, guess what? There's a lot of cool things that you haven't even thought of. Maybe if you looked into this or this, and you can literally, is there anybody in your life that you're taking, this friendship and trying to impart everything that you know on a personal level with this person, right? You're trying to make another you, or you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of the discouraging things that happen is you come at somebody with the most crazy conspiracy thing, whether it's true or not, it's so far above where they're at. Like, I was shocked, to be honest with you, when I got in to this small group and we started talking about spiritual warfare, because some of the answers and things that I was getting from, mainstream Christians was, I thought they were at a higher level than that. Okay. Now it's challenging enough to try to figure out how to reach these people. But if you just get out of the Spirit's way, right? Let the Father do it. Don't try to force it. Don't think like, well, they got to know right now. Before this conversation's over, they're going to know, whether they accept it or not. I'm going to tell them, because that ain't how it works, man. It's all part of your training too, because I have to learn how to break down this theory, this conspiracy, or this knowledge that I'm trying to impart, and teach a child. You don't get to start off with this huge background where they have knowledge of the Nephilim and the Rh negative blood and Gary Wayne's book and all this stuff, like we do. These people have never heard of half of this stuff. Like, they're asking questions like, can demons do anything to Christians? And you're like, absolutely, they can do. You know what I mean? But they're like, what? And, we had this conversation over Halloween. We were talking about why I don't partake in Halloween. And they were justifying why they took part in Halloween. But you could tell every single one of them was convicted by it. You know what I mean? They're all super convicted, or they wouldn't be trying to come up with an excuse as to why they do. But they don't even know the basics of spiritual warfare, which, it was just shocking to me. But I'm like, you know what? If I am not here, who would tell these people? Maybe I'm the guy that's going to have to tell these people, right? And am I up to that? Or am I looking for just another group to jump into and be able to discuss Nephilim every week and topics that I'm already familiar with? You know what I mean? Or do I want to take that challenge and try to break down this immense knowledge that we all have in this group and share it with children, so to speak, and bring them into the knowledge, right? Walk with them every step of the way. When they take a step back or when, just go right with them. Like, hey, I know, I've been where you're at and this is what we got to do, right? Let's pray about it. Let's do, that's what we should be doing, man. And you can change your city and you can't change the world unless you change your city. You got to start there, So let's all start there. God has spread us out for a reason, He didn't put all of his people in one little state like we all wish we lived in. We all wish we lived in this, Texas community where it's warm all year and everybody's just.
I don't want to live in Texas, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what we're all longing for. We're like, hey, let's all, let's get close to each other so we can hang out in fellowship, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, those times of coming together and refreshing are necessary and needed to feast with each other.
Absolutely.
But yes. It can become very seductive to pull up just in having friends around you and that being your relationships day in and day out and not confronting the darkness around it. But you'll find out that those things end up eating themselves anyway from within. They get eaten from within.
I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed too is like, I feel like I have a large knowledge base on certain things, but one of the things that I really, really hope that I can learn from this pastor that is the head pastor of the church I go to is how to love people like he does, because I can tell all over him that the Holy Spirit is on that man and he loves people, and I don't have that love yet, So I may be able to teach him some things or whatever, but I know for a fact that I can learn some things from these elders, They may not be on the same page with everything, but guess what, guys? None of us are. So, let's stop fighting about it and figure some stuff out here.
Well, the key component, I think, with all of this is the individual relationship with one-on-one, one person at a time, one relationship at a time, one conversation at a time. Listen to what they have to say, because everybody is a book that deserves to be written.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's life is a book that deserves to be written, and we can help them write the ending. Right? We can be used to write the ending and make it a good one. We can be involved, or we can shut down. Maybe you're a person tonight out there who's listening in. Maybe you're inspired. I hope so. We're coming to the end of the show. I hope you've been inspired to listen to Ian and what's going on for the last 2 years, and how the Lord took someone who was just wanting some fellowship to becoming a tool. We're excited to see what the Father's going to do with you in the next 2 years. Ian Chadrick, maybe we won't have to wait that long to get you on again. Now that I got the duck here backing me up, we can do these live shows more often, and there's a better chance of that now. But one relationship at a time. If you're a person out there who's still struggling, knowing what you're supposed to be doing, the first question I'm going to ask you is, are you praying? Are you reading the Bible? Are you reading the scriptures and praying? If you're doing those things, this next question I have you is, have you found a friend, someone that you can talk with, that you aren't doing this alone with? If it's not your spouse, a friend. Do you have somebody out there, a trusted friend, whom you can communicate with, converse with, and pray with, and talk through these things? Look, folks, we were not meant to do this alone. We were not meant to do this alone. In whatever avenue of ministry it is, this show could have been continued to be Disputed Lands with Chad Schaefer. The logo is going to have to change because Ian Fiaducci is on here with me now, right? I can't do this show. It's very tempting. It's very tempting to want to do things alone, to do it so you don't gets done your way, right? Less interaction. You can do everything the way you want it done. no counsel to answer to, anything like that. Nobody to provide feedback. You can just keep going. Whatever it is, whatever ministry, whatever part of it, you are not meant to do these things alone. There's a whole host of people out here in the chat right now you can reach out to. The person who heads up the Disputed Lands Prayer Team, Marla, is in here right now. Go to the Disputed Lands page and say, hey, Marla, is there somebody, a group out here or a group of people that I can connect with? I want to get connected with the people that are in this group. Maybe go to the Disputed Lands page and just say that, hey, I heard you. I want to get connected with folks like you to talk with. I need to find a friend out there, someone I can converse with, share interests with. And you just keep going, and you will find a friend out here that thinks like you do. Just like Ian and Tony did, right? And Ian Fiaducci, just like all these guys did, they connected in 2 years' time. 2 years' time. If that is not an inspiration to you of what God can do with somebody in ministry in 2 years, I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to tell you. Last thing, we're at the end of our show tonight, guys. Went quick. All night. I've been in all week since I got these. Thank you again to Marla who hooked us up. Head warmers for $10. That's all they are. For $10, go to my website at that link right there. All proceeds are going back into the show to continue to do the things that I need to do. This is the company right here. I hope it'll focus long enough. Maybe it won't. This is South Texas QTs. That's QTEES and things. Karen Mann, if you want to get your own logo made up deals and out of Texas, I got the information. Just ask me for it. But Marla hooked this up. She hooked these things up. She had the design made and everything. I thought they came out awesome. I only have 9 left. 1 sold, but that's 1 in 3 days now, or 2 days now. Man, these things got to sell. I know it's cold where you live. Well, most of you here in the north. Go get your head warmer. Take on the World TV. Be in prayer for Chris and Liz and all those traveling to FEIC. Our brothers and sisters that are going to that. We want them to stay safe in their travels, to have a good time of fellowship and encouragement, learning and growing. Our Disputed Lands team, be in prayer for Remnant Restoration, for Mike Spalding, and all these other ministries that Dr. Lake, Skywatch TV, all these guys are brothers and sisters. May not agree with you on everything that you understand about the scriptures, but we have got to start lifting each other up in prayer. We've got to start doing what I will always do on this show, and that's talk with people who may not always agree and see things the way I do. Don't tell me I can't talk to somebody. Don't. You're wrong. I can. I'll call them after I get done with the show. As a matter of fact, if you tell me. But got to start loving each other, just doing the work, be encouraged, love one another, get out there, do something, reach out, go to the Disputed Lands Facebook page, or you got to be a member, you got to be let in. We just don't let any old willy-nilly wolf in there. And if you show yourself to be a wolf, I have no problem kicking your butt out of there either. I'm not just some run over nice guy who's going to cry all the time. I will fight. I did wrestle, and I do get mad. Especially at people hurting my friends. I don't take that. Anyway, Disputed Lands, Monday nights. Take on the World. We'll see you next week. Next week, do you have somebody already lined up for next week?
I do.
Doug?
Yeah.
Who's going to be on next week? These folks aren't used to knowing ahead of time who's going to be here.
I didn't know if you wanted that announced, but yeah.
Tell them.
Yeah, I've got Mr. Chad Taylor booked for next week, and we'll be talking about where on earth. What on earth? It's where on earth, right?
Where on earth?
Where on earth? Right. Where on earth are we? Right.
All right. Love you guys. Till we see you next time. High five, everybody. Peace.